right, last session of the day. I always bring like the high energy closers. So we have the closers coming up. And only closers get coffee, remember that. So you guys better deliver. Yeah. This is one of my favorite topics in talking about food tech is how restaurants are changing, and boy, are they changing quite a bit. And so we have some panels that will come at it from different perspectives, but all interesting perspectives. And so let's get a little context and have each of them introduce themselves. We're gonna start with Tom to my immediate left, who's working with a company that I think is really interesting, kind of building robotics into the core concept. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Thanks for having me. My name is Tom Cortese. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Kernel Foods. We are based in New York City, and we currently have 2 restaurants open and a 3rd coming, so if you're in New York, come visit. Our goal is to figure out how to take fresh food made daily and turn it into fast food, which seems completely ridiculous, which is why I thought this was a great idea. As a core component of that, we're going to use software and AI to understand our inventory and manage a just-in-time supply chain so that we can move that food to our restaurants at the right time and be able to have food that expires in anywhere between 4 hours and 36 hours, as opposed to producing food that expires in 30 to 90 days, which you shouldn't eat. And we're using automation systems, including robotics, inside the restaurant to help with the final preparation of the food, to be able to reduce the labor load in the restaurant and supplement the jobs that folks don't want anymore with robotics, to be able to then offer our staff a higher paid wages for the jobs they do.
That's great. We'll get a little bit more into your background as well. I think it's interesting. And to your left, we have Chef Kelly, who we've had some great conversations because you're really interested in how AI is changing food, and you've kind of really dove deep into that. Tell us a little bit about your background. What you're doing.
Yeah, I've been a chef for almost 20 years now. I have history in corporate dining, most recently with Nestle, and before that, Disney. And both of them had really robust, sustainable initiatives that I took part in and believed in, kind of, until about this time last year when I realized that AI could play a huge role in sustainability and in agriculture and just kind of saving the planet, really. And so I created the firm called The Future of Food. It's a consortium. It's myself that's consulting, and then I bring in people who are like-minded that can fill in the gaps in technology and other places that I'm not skilled at. And together we can help the middle and little guy become more sustainable and have a sustainable profit as well as we move towards the future of food and AI.
Great. And Lee Kindell, I love having on the session. I actually brought him back from last year because he's so great on stage, and but also like he makes like the best pizza. And he's based in Seattle. So tell them a little bit what you're doing, Lee.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate you giving us your time today. My name's Lee Kindell. I'm the founder of Moto Pizza. We're doing it a little bit crazy, and I like to call it odd pizza. We're bringing in robotics. We're building out a robotic system, and my end game for that is to build a fully autonomous pizza restaurant. And I know it's been done before, but I think everybody's failed. So that's one of my end game pieces. I'm also gonna be one of the first in the United States to be delivering pizza by drone, hopefully by the 2nd or 3rd quarter of this year. So we've been implementing as much in robotics and AI as we can, but still keep the idea of craftsmanship, artisan, the love of food, and that human interaction is really important to us. So as we delve into all of this technology and craziness, we can't forget the most important thing is all of us, right? And so the end game for that is to how do we bring all that together, but do it in a loving, thoughtful, mindful way.
Thank you. And Shelly Ruppel, down at the very end. How are you doing, Shelly? You do really interesting stuff and think about how restaurants can change using technologies like blockchain and AI, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so Shelley Ruppel, CEO of Devour, 30 years for me, 30 years plus, I have to age myself a little bit there, in restaurant and retail tech. And in 21, really looked at post-pandemic, everything that happened with digital ordering within the restaurants. What's next? How are restaurants going to tap into Gen Z and Alpha generation behind them? And where that took me was gamified engagement and gamified marketing directly into video games. And so Devour now, we are available via mod overlay in 2,000 games, everything from Call of Duty, Valorant, League of Legends, Fortnite, Roblox. And we can do gamified engagement for brands and rewarding of gamers themselves, with commerce included. So think of it, we are a marketplace. Think of Uber Eats or DoorDash available with merchants in the marketplace, but tapping into 90% of Gen Z identify as gamers, so.
It's funny, I remember like 3 years ago, there's a lot of metaverse plays around food. And there's still a few, like Jeff over at Wow Bao has he still believes in metaverse and food, but is that a thing where food brands or restaurants think you can maybe I guess with game, it is kind of a metaverse, right? Like that's the first point of contact. Go to order some pizza while I'm playing playing games, right?
Yes. So you think of Roblox or some version of metaverse there. To your point, 21. A lot of people. How do I get in the metaverse? Really, technology is still kind of early there as far as a true experience of let's meet up, let's have lunch or dinner, and have that be in the metaverse, but. Gen Z, Alpha, they live their lives online and virtually, and so where and how can we meet them where they live their lives differently than millennials and Gen Xers? So.
Well, let's talk about social, because in a way, social is an online extension, maybe connecting to a bit to the metaverse. Certainly Zuckerberg thinks that way. Is a lot of the engagement for restaurants. And I think, Lee, you do a lot of engagement through Instagram. You're great at that, telling your story. Is that a way in which restaurants are getting first point of contact with a lot of potential customers?
I think some early adopters are. Chipotle did the experience in Roblox. Jeff, you mentioned him from Wow Bao. He's always a first mover on a lot of things. He did a Roblox experience. There have been a lot of things within Fortnite. So, early adopters are seeing what the benefit and potential is there for sure.
I already just realized, oh no, now Lee's going to do a metaverse restaurant.
Well, I do have to say, when I found out that Shelley was doing this, I actually looked up the app and I downloaded this morning. So I found out about her last night, looked her up, kind of stalked all three of these guys. I love them. But I downloaded that and I'm really excited to implement it into my restaurant operations. I think it's the future.
Speaking of restaurant operations, Tom, I think the way you guys are building it out, whereas I think you have some centralized production, and then you're using technology in the endpoints, the points of presence, which are the restaurants, to kind of finish it off. Talk about how you're thinking about reimagining the way restaurants can do their food flow and then ultimately touch customers.
Yeah, well, first of all, we are also going to become buyers of Devour. I decided that earlier. That is definitely the future. Makes a ton of sense. We've got to go build a restaurant first to have the food to sell. But central kitchen, that allows us to concentrate culinary talent. So we have real chefs doing real cooking with real kitchen stuff. No robots, no AI, knives, pots, ovens. And so we want to take that and then move that to the endpoints. And then from there, we need a quick and seamless flow that can finish that food. So that make line is where we are integrating people and automation systems. So we're taking the jobs that have the highest cognitive load or the most physically demanding, like loading and unloading stuff from a hot 625-degree oven all day. And in that case, we're going to have a robot do that task. People are super happy that the robot is doing that task. We can then ensure that if you're ordering a sandwich, your bun is toasted at the exact moment just prior to your chicken patty coming out of the oven. So that chicken patty comes out of the oven, and then the bun is toasted exactly at the same time, and that's handed to the person assembler, who then makes your sandwich perfectly hot, packages up, and hands it to you. And so that's how we're reimagining that make line.
But you're iterating and you're experimenting, because we were just talking in the pre-chat, like you're like, I wanted to tear the robot out. So like you're learning lessons and maybe thinking about how you can optimize and maybe get better robots into the maybe more purpose-built. Tell us about your thinking, your experimentation.
Yeah, well, this is part of the problem with I don't know anything about restaurants. Over a dozen years ago, I co-founded a company called Peloton, and then got coaxed into doing this whole, food thing, which I still don't understand how that happened, but here I am. And in the technology world, hey, I'm at CES, so I think you guys all might understand what I'm saying. Quick iteration is how you survive. It's how you make things. So here I am opening restaurants, closing restaurants, opening restaurants, closing restaurants, opening restaurants, closing restaurants. The landlords all want to kill me. But this is how we are going to iterate our way quickly into the future. So we put in an industrial multi-axis robot to be able to load and unload the oven, and it worked great. But I'm not going to scale an industrial multi-axis robot to thousands of restaurants. Hopefully I could make 3 restaurants, but the idea is to make this scale. And so, cool, I get it, proof of concept, that worked, cool, yank it out. Now maybe a cobot goes in. Maybe I use something on a servo. These are the things we want to be able to quickly play with. And so that's how we're going to figure out how to get this done.
Well, I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, go,
So
Sean.
are they pop-ups, or are you just doing sort of case study by case study by case study?
So they're not pop-ups. We actually we have proper leases and proper restaurants and very,
Up and up, right.
very kind landlords. And it's not as chaotic as I make it sound. A little bit of exaggeration makes a better story. But we haven't been shy to say like, okay, this is working, but I need to try something different in order to get to the next stage. And because we're running a restaurant, and we are not just staying in a lab, that has some amount of public-facing disruption, which is really interesting when we have the amount of PR we have pointing at us.
Yeah, and you do because of your founder, who is the creator of Chipotle, which you guys may have heard of. So like you have that great founder story. It's super interesting. But Chef Kelly, I want to ask you, like this kind of entrepreneur mindset and kind of quick, try ideas out, doesn't work. Are you, for like you as a chef, is that something you're kind of doing personally? Because you've been in food service for a long time. You're trying to like think about how I can use AI in my workflow. It sounds like maybe you can do this to a certain degree as well.
Well, I think that it's a little less entrepreneurial for me, in the sense that when I'm consulting with the companies, they like the fact that I've been in the trenches and that I question everything. I question the food safety. I question the temperatures. I question, where are your logs? I question who is coming along and saying, when Rosie the robot breaks down, who's going to fix her? Who's making sure that Rosie's temperatures are correct when she's taking the temperatures. So those are the I have to play devil's advocate. Those are the questions I have to ask, because at the end of the day, it was always me who was the last person before, person responsible before the customer got the food. And if anything was ever wrong with that food, it was a reflection on me. And it's my work's pride to not let that happen. So to answer your question, it's less entrepreneurial and more looking forward, and how can we integrate AI into those tasks and make them, safer for the human that won't cut themselves when they're prepping the salad, or won't burn themselves on the fryer. But
What's so interesting to me is like you've been in it for a long time, but currently the two guys are running operated restaurants. You guys are actually fairly new to restaurants. Like Lee, you're pretty new. You actually were running a youth hostel like what, 5 years ago? The pandemic came, and you're doing this new kind of concept. Does it take like outsiders in a way to kind of come in and break the mold? Lee, do you think?
I don't know if it takes outsiders but I'm definitely an outliner. Like my motto is pretty much break everything, break shit. Like You figure out, when you break things, you figure out your processes better, you understand your product more, you understand your customers, like because I'm constantly breaking things. And, but it, like Tom was saying, those iterations, you grow so fast from that. So yeah, you gotta stop, repair, rebuild, but with those iterations, the building actually picks up a momentum that seems to be a lot faster.
Yeah, Lee and I share the excitement around breaking things, but I also think that ignorance is bliss. That saying didn't come out of nothing, and by not knowing, that means that I don't have the emotional memory of all sorts of things that I'm sure go wrong in restaurants all the time. That would prevent a regular restaurant operator from being like, oh, geez, we're not going to go and tackle that because that's impossible. I'm like, oh, of course you could do that. Why not? Let's do it. So ignorance is a little bit bliss, and I do think that is where where outsiders can be helpful, but you're right, not a requirement.
But Shelley, like you have this institutional knowledge of being in the restaurant business as a tech platform builder for a while, but you're also like a tech platform builder. So I think you can be a breaker as well, but be in restaurants. But have you ever operated a restaurant, or you've always kind of been building platforms for restaurants?
In my 20s, I was a restaurant and nightclub owner, so I've always been what's next. And so, with Devour, it was how far out the lines can we step? What can we do? What, that's different. I would say I've always said in the restaurant industry, we're kind of the last to adopt new technology. The pandemic, again, the second time I've brought that up, really kind of adjusted mindset within the industry. But I think there's so much value to people who aren't ingrained in it, of thinking outside the box and doing things that are different. So I think, there's a huge value to that as well.
Yeah, it seems like the failure rate for restaurants has always been high, but it seems like it's gotten even higher since the pandemic. I read in the Seattle Times, where Lee and I live, like there's always like an article, these are the restaurants that went out of business this week, and it's always kind of super depressing. Kelly, like when you think about restaurants and how they go out of business, like do you think AI or tools like that are going to be necessary? I mean, or will there always be like a high failure rate for restaurants?
There's always going to be a high failure rate for restaurants because, it's what, 75% or 3/4 of all restaurants fail within the first year. And it's just because there's so many moving parts. You've got the creative aspect, and then you've got the safety and the state coming in and telling you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. I think what AI can do is mitigate some of the human error in that and help streamline the situations for you and make sure that your permits are done and you're following everything. And of course, we talked about this too, inventory and POS and pattern predicting on sales and things like that. That will definitely help, but there has to be adoption. And it's how getting the end user, the mom and pop, to understand that investment is pretty necessary.
I mean, what I don't understand yet about the restaurant industry is just like, it is a low margin business. And so how on earth is a low margin business going to support an investment in technology? I just don't think it's possible for most restaurants. So that's a problem. So as a startup, right, we have, as a venture-backed startup, I don't have to rely on my restaurants throwing off cash to make this technology investment. And so that's going to allow us to make the technology investment continuously fail, right? Where my restaurant probably should be closed, right? If I was just running a regular restaurant, given the rate at which I'm breaking things and failing. But we won't be because you're the
innovators. You're the first ones to be doing it.
No, because we're venture backed. Because I'm spending money that I shouldn't otherwise have. I think that has to become an important part of a restaurant. You haven't seen that type of investment in restaurants. You've seen, venture and others afraid to invest in restaurants. The investment I see in restaurant comes from private equity after they see that they're throwing off cash, and then they want to roll them up and just throw tons of cash off. That doesn't propel innovation. And so, to the extent that we can propel venture dollars into this industry to create the robotics that we have at Modo, or create the new types of platforms that we have at Devour, or help create the types of integrated systems that we're trying to build at Kernel, that's going to create breakthroughs that you just have not been able to see in restaurants before. And I don't know if it's really going to come, but I think there's a couple examples up here of it beginning to come.
Well, I'm just going to say something real fast because I know you guys want to get in on this too. The cool thing about AI is that it's going to make a lot of what was not affordable and only for the big players much more affordable for the little guys. And I'm already starting to see it. And that's why you have your Oracles and your Qualcomms and all of those who build these software systems that sell these to the POS and inventory and all this stuff. Because there is big business, it's just in smaller, like, software as a service type thing. But I think AI will make it a lot more affordable. Sorry, go ahead.
Shelley, do you think, to Kelly's point, there's going to be a democratization with these AI platforms where we can put in the hands of smaller operators, mom and pop shops, maybe smaller chains, regional chains, capabilities that they wouldn't otherwise have? I mean, Tom talked about how he can't see where you get the dollars to invest in technology. It seems like to me though, technology platforms like AI actually is a democratizing force potentially for what they can maybe do.
Yeah, the thing is it affordable for the small startup? So many restaurant founders are non-business people who have a dream of opening a restaurant, and then it's how do you're running a small manufacturing operation every single day. How do you make that profitable? Now there are companies, one of my former employers, Toast, who've come along, and there's advancing technology that's more affordable for the smaller operator, but it's still it's a problem, right? As far as being able to fund what is needed to operate a restaurant, and even if they have it, do they know what to do with it? That's the other thing. Now AI, I think it's going to change so much of what we do across so many industries.
So Lee, you're not just about robots. I mean, when you started your restaurant, you started to think about how I can maybe scale, how I can build out. You had an epiphany, I think, when you realized you should use a mixer. That's an interesting story, but that epiphany, I think, led to all sorts of technology. Like, hey, I can use technology to scale, and this is a force multiplier for me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, that's a fun story. I was quite the obsessed craftsman. Like, I made my dough in an 18th century wooden dough trowel, and I mixed it by hand. Like, I was insane. And, when that kind of switch happened where I started to adapt technology, I really treated it like a startup. And when I started, implementing technology, robotics, I use an Excel sheet for our next 250 stores, and there's about 1,000 plugs into this Excel sheet that will adjust from just the change of 30 cents in the price of cheese. So all of my 8 locations that we opened within 3-year period are all profitable, and that is very attractive to the smart money or the VC money. And I really think it's about execution and really playing with those details, utilizing the AI, which I'm doing, and tying all this together really makes an attractive. I got venture capital just knocking on my door right now. We're getting ready to do another raise. We just closed on our seed round. So I think the combination of this kind of entrepreneurial mindset, but also as a tech startup is kind of how I'm treating myself. That becomes very attractive, and I find a lot of other restaurateurs are kind of starting to follow my lead on this, and I think we're going to see some big changes coming up soon. Not because of me, but because of the big picture of everything happening. Like you said, how everything is accessible. I just downloaded the gaming app, and I can't wait to use it for my restaurants. That's super exciting.
I love it.
Yeah, restaurateurs will be able to make their own apps to do whatever the heck they want with it.
Where I've seen high failure rates is in startups is where they both try to be a restaurant, but also oftentimes try to spend a bunch of CapEx on inventing technology. What you've done different, I think, to a certain degree, Lee, is okay, you're just using off-the-shelf robots as a service. Your investors aren't putting a bunch of money in kind of building new robotics. I think you guys are trying new robotics, and I don't necessarily think you want to be a robotic startup. You'll try what's out there and maybe optimize it. But I do think that is a model that we haven't seen a lot of success that I know of. I know maybe you talk a little bit about what you think you guys are doing with your money and how you're using it to use the technology.
Yeah, I think that. So you're right. So first of all, like we're buying off the shelf multi-axis robots, and then we're developing the software that orchestrates these things. I do think the software is where the magic happens and where the proprietary intellectual property is going to come from in this particular world. But then leveraging existing hardware. I will say that before I arrived at Kernel, they had actually spent a lot of money and a lot of time trying to develop bespoke hardware, all of which we have now ripped out. And so, yeah, that is just a good lesson to pass along. Agree with you, like unnecessary as a startup. There's a lot that you can leverage to get
Sweetgreen just acquired
started.
Spice because they basically did all the robotics work and then they acqui-hired them.
Yeah, or you use off the shelf until you achieve scale, at which point you leverage that as a proof of concept, and then build what's next.
There's Tech Magic from Japan, but they're more a robotics company than a restaurant company. They'll take their robotics, they'll build it, they try it out in a restaurant concept, but then they have this and then they can sell to a bigger restaurant chain. So I feel like you almost need to make a decision. Are you a technology company or are you a restaurant? It's hard to be both, right?
So I think I'd take a slightly different position there. One of the reasons I agreed to do this and was excited to invest and put my time and go and spend the next God knows how many years of my life making this happen is because we're trying to build a restaurant and the technology. What I would worry about, and what I look at some of the other players in restaurant technology, they're trying to be a technology company, building a piece of technology for an imagined buyer. At which point, you don't really know what you're building or who you're building for, and there's just too many possibilities, and then the chances of product market fit become really slim. And so here, you're right, it's way more capital intensive what we're doing, a very high risk of failure, which makes it more fun. But I have real problems actually in front of me that need solutions, and then I understand how those problems are manifesting, and then I'm leveraging technology to go and fill those gaps. And so I think that gives us a massive advantage, albeit at high risk.
I think we're seeing big swings. This is a big swing, but I think it's potentially a really profitable one. So I do think there's like a huge potential payoff if it works for you guys, because you have the right executive team, you have the right founder. Shelley, given what you're seeing over the past couple of years, it seems like there are some people taking some really big swings, which is an exciting time for the restaurant business, right? Yeah. Are you talking to some of these folks?
Yeah, so from a chain or a restaurant standpoint, so definitely, right? All sizes. Jeff Alexander, Wow Bao, has been a friend of Devour since nearly the start. Brands, I've had to say it's not where the ball is at today, it's where it's going to be, right? Unlike being venture-backed, we're bootstrapped, self-funded in a lot of what we've built over the last 3 years. So it's also been leveraging the relationships to get brands to take a chance on it as well. For us, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond just restaurants, and I shouldn't say just restaurants, it's an industry I've loved, but also CPG, anything. Our commerce and the gamification doesn't have to just be restaurants. That is a perfect fit because food is the perfect perk for gamers, but it can expand past that as well, and there's a lot of interest in it. It's getting them to step over that line to actually, jump in before they know whether or not it's going to work. You have your brands who are like, we're going to be a fast follower. Mm-hmm. We're not tip of the spear. And then you have your others who are definitely willing to be on the front end of the crossing the chasm.
Can you talk a little bit about personalization? Because when I was thinking a lot about blockchain and NFTs and restaurants, the exciting part to me was not the underlying technology is interesting, but I think ultimately creating a more personalized relationship with the restaurant, I think that technology was a lever to do that.
Right.
And I still think that's a really interesting space, like creating more personalized relationships with restaurants through loyalty programs. Where are we going in that with that area?
Yeah. So that is what got me really intrigued with blockchain, was the value of the underlying technology, but what could you do with it for creating relationships? What's it mean for the consumer to own the asset, to own the data instead of a brand or somebody trying to market to them? And all the things that are possible in personalization and loyalty. I can mint you something that then can, promotion specific to you can be triggered off of, endless. And those can be dynamic, that data can be added to it. There's kind of an endless possibility of personalization and developing a closer relationship. I always worry about technology separating us rather than bringing us together. And there's a lot actually you can do with technology to create those connections that are a part of what's always been important in hospitality. And technology can do that when used correctly.
Lee, I don't know how much you know about your customers as they come in, but when you think about your restaurant in the future, like creating a personalized pizza for someone using technology, that probably excites you. I don't know if it's possible. Like, hey, Mike's Pizza. By the way, if you make Mike's Pizza, have it delivered by drone. That's pretty cool. But like, are you thinking about this at all?
Oh, my head's gonna pop.
Yeah, right?
Like with the technology that Shelly has, like I can really see this interface with the customer, and especially owning their own data, that they can do whatever they want to, even sell it versus the other commercial aspects selling it. Like that's really interesting. And I really think that personalization, because it's all about the human experience. So whether it's technology or another person making that experience positive, that's what it's all about. So I'm really excited about what the future is going to bring. And I think this AI technology is really where it's at. And I might be a little too enthusiastic about it, but as we build, where Tom was talking about, I think we can be both technology and kind of like analog restaurant, right? And we're literally building a robot right now in a garage, which I think is so freaking cool because it kind of matches those startup stories. But I think, that's the thing. Whatever you're doing, that story that you're telling, that's where it's at. So utilizing this wonderful technology, like I'm super excited about. And I think my customers are gonna love us even more just because we're investing more into them.
All right, well, we have a little over 6 minutes. So I want to kind of spend some time asking each person about what they're really excited about in the future around, like, what technology might be really game-changing and what they see the restaurants looking like in maybe 10-year time frame. So I'll start with you, Tom. Like, when you think about the future of restaurants, and you've been doing this for the past year or so, past 2 years, all these technologies you're evaluating, where do you see this all going? What do you think restaurants look like 10 years from now? And what technologies are most exciting there?
All right, I think I'll answer on two sides.
Sure.
So on one side of the coin, I do think it seems pretty clear that there is a labor challenge in restaurants. I'm shocked, as much as I'm shocked by the low margins. I'm more shocked by the high turnover rate. That when I talk to restaurateurs, the high turnover rate of staff, and high turnover rate is a signal that that's a job that people just don't want, right? And so to me, that seems like an imminent problem that needs solving, and this is a great opportunity for automation and robotics. If there are jobs in the world that people don't want, those are good jobs that we should put automation and robotics. That makes the human jobs better and allows us to pay more for those people. That will make a much better restaurant and a more attractive restaurant for people. I like that. On the other side of it, the margin side, food waste is a massive contributor to this margin problem that I now understand. I didn't know any of this very recently. And so, cool, okay. So now this is where I think AI and software makes a big leap, because I should be able to better understand what my demand patterns are using simple models, And that should allow me to better and in a more fine-grained way decide how many raw ingredients to buy, when and how much and what quantities to turn those raw ingredients into ready-to-go items, and when to take those items out of the refrigerator and start my degradation clock on those items. That seems like an imminently solvable problem for software and AI that could improve the margin. So I think we can improve on the labor side, which solves for food quality, consistency, and operating margins, and we can improve on the waste side, which allows you to have fresher food and increase your margins. So it's going to be a much better restaurant business.
And less carbon emissions through less wasted food, which is good. Kelly.
I'm chomping at the bit on this one. I just love the idea that we could become more sustainable, and we could have less food waste. I think we can also have more transparent food chains. I like to call it from seed to supper. I want to know where my seed was planted. I want to know on which farm, by which farmer. I want to know what truck it was on and how many emissions that truck expelled and what grocery store it was sold at before it gets on my plate. And I think that's something we can do, and I think that we can use AI to also increase seasonality and work with local farmers to get better prices and drive the food costs down so that the profit margin could go up. Where we're going to be in 10 years, guys, I don't know. I didn't think we were going to be here, 2 years ago. It's going to blow our minds. And I think that hopefully we'll see just a cleaner food system all around, and that'll trickle up to big corp and down to mom and pop at the brick and mortar.
Thanks. Lee.
Who here is familiar with Meow Wolf? Raise your hand. Or there you go. Okay, yeah. Or Gentle Monster, the eyeglasses place. No. Yeah, Gentle Monster. So these are places that you walk into, and the experience is mind-boggling. Like, you remember that so well. And I see restaurants having this interface that is going to be very entertaining. And I think, I see my place being a place where you can be, you can watch the robotics happening, but in some way interface with it. And I think the personalization of that experience is going to be where it's at too. So I'm kind of taking the, hey, we're the circus approach, come and be entertained. I kind of see that's where the future is going, because I love places that I get an experience that is not just me, food, and it's transactional. I love this thing of like, this memorable thing with the people that I love and the friends that I love. So I personally am going that direction with our restaurants, but I also think, the craftsmanship of restaurants are really important, and that one-on-one, like, I love Thomas Keller's restaurant and what he does there, and that passion for food. But I like the circus route.
Yeah.
Shelley.
I think Lee and I are kindred spirits. It's just you can tell it with him. I'm a little undercover and hidden, right? But it's experience. The creator influence world that we are so driven by today. What is that going to look like for the experiences that continue to be created? And of course, because of what I do, gamification, engagement, how authenticity of brands being able to get in front of a demographic and a generation that they want, but it all starts with experience, and that has to be different. And the current generations, how you tap into that is very different than my generation or the generation in between, and I think that is super important, and we will see that evolve in a huge way, because to down age demographics, you've got to show up in the way that they want to engage.
That's awesome. All right, we're near the end. Next year, Lee, I want you to have a drone deliver pizza and drop it on stage. Can we do that next year? Is that fun?
Oh, hell yes.
All right. This has been a lot of fun. This is the last session, so let's give everyone a big round of applause. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming to the track. This is the 4th year we've done Food Tech at CES. We really appreciate all your support, and give us feedback. We always can learn how we can do better, and thank you again for coming. And if you want to chat with these folks as they walk off stage, come on up. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.